From the New Yorker magazine, Omar Suleiman, recently named vice president of Egypt by embattled dictator Hosni Mubarak, is one of the names being mentioned as a possible alternative to President Mubarak. Suleiman himself carries some controversial baggage from the standpoint of those looking for a clean slate on human rights. Since 1993, Suleiman has headed the feared Egyptian General Intelligence Service. In that capacity, he was the CIA's point man in Egypt for renditions, the covert program in which the CIA snatched terror suspects from around the world and returned them to Egypt and elsewhere for interrogation, often under brutal circumstances.
Egypt is not going to go back to what it was. The Egyptian people want freedom, they want free and fair elections, they want a representative government, they want a responsive government. And so what we've said is, you have to start a transition now.
Beginning in the 1990s, Suleiman negotiated directly with top agency officials. Every rendition was green-lighted at the highest levels of both the U.S. and Egyptian intelligence agencies. Edward Walker Jr., a former U.S. ambassador to Egypt, described Suleiman as, quote, very bright, very realistic, adding that he was cognizant that there was a downside to, quote, some of the negative things that the Egyptians engaged in, of torture and so on. But he was not squeamish, by the way. Technically, U.S. law required the CIA to seek assurances from Egypt that rendered suspects wouldn't face torture, but under Suleiman's reign at the intelligence service, such assurances were considered close to worthless. As Michael Schur, a former CIA officer who helped set up the practice of rendition, later testified before Congress, even if such assurances were written in indelible ink, quote, they weren't worth a bucket of warm spit. Meanwhile, Egyptian opposition figure Mohammed el-Baradei slammed fledgling negotiations on Egypt's future, in which he said he was not invited to the talks. The Nobel Peace Laureate and former head of the UN nuclear watchdog said negotiations on the future of the largest Arab country were not a step toward the change protesters have demanded in 2 weeks of demonstrations.
There is still a huge lack of confidence between the government and the demonstrators. There's a good deal of fear that the government will retrench and then come back, again with vengeance, if you like. The process is opaque. Nobody knows who is talking to whom at this stage. The process is managed by the outgoing regime without the involvement of the new opposition, if you like, or the rest of the people. It's managed by Vice President Suleiman. And it is all managed by the military, David, and that's part of the problem. The president is a military man, the vice president is a military man, the prime minister is a military man.
At the same time, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton argued at a security conference in Munich that the Obama administration respects and supports Egypt's military institution and leadership.
There are respected institutions that are functioning and effective within Egypt that need to be maintained. The Army is a respected institution. The business sector, particularly the banking sector, there are many different parts of the society that will be essential for the kind of peaceful, orderly transition that we are all hoping for.